Meeting to order. Mr. Clayton, if you would ask for some divine intervention, and Mr. Currier, if you would lead us in the pledge, I'd appreciate it.
Let us bow our heads. Heavenly Father, please be with this group as we go about having this meeting. Please be with all of those here today that have business before us. Please be with our young men and women in the military as they go about doing their duty to allow us to have meetings such as this. Please be with Ray as he recovers from his surgery and is not with us today. In thy holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Anybody got anything they want to add or delete to the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I would request that item number 6, EDC performance, be postponed until Mr. Jeffers can be present.
All right. Do we have to vote on that?
Agenda adjustment then.
All right. Anything else?
Mr. Chairman, I would ask regarding item number 6, is there going to be any discussion as to if there's going to be an interview process for that agenda item when the time comes?
That is certainly an option if that's what you desire. I have no preference one way or the other.
As long as we have an idea, as long as we have a knowledge that there will be an interview process, I'll agree with that.
All right. Now, the first question on that is we do it in closed session or open session?
We've done it both ways.
I know.
I
think the lawyer says we need to do it in open session.
Okay.
All right, so I guess we need to instruct Brenda to have them here at our next meeting.
Prior to.
How about prior to? That's a
that'd
morning
be
meeting.
Yeah.
It is a morning meeting in the auditorium. So you want to hold those prior to the meeting?
It starts at 9. It's local government day.
What time y'all want to start?
How many will I have?
5.
5 minutes should be sufficient. 8:30.
Okay.
All right, so we'll recess this meeting until 8:30 a.m. on the 19th.
Okay.
Excuse me, 18th of March.
All righty. Any other adjustments? Not all in favor of accepting the agenda as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we got any informal comments?
No, sir, we do not.
All right. Do we have anything in the consent agenda that we need to pull out and talk about?
Move for approval.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Dr. Peterson, if you would come and help us with the school calendar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, Ms. York.
Good morning.
Appreciate the opportunity coming for you this morning. As you know, the school system, Person County School, is under a current legislation that limits our ability to have calendar flexibility inside of our schools. Our charter schools are not, do not have to adhere to this particular calendar law. Basically, what the law states is that our schools must begin the Monday closest to August 26th and has to end Friday closest to June 11th. We have a lot of concerns with it, and I will share a couple of those for you this morning. One of those is we have students that begin school at Piedmont Community College 2 weeks prior than our schools start. And so we have a group of our students that begin 2 weeks early, they end 2 weeks early, and with the combination of Person high school classes, it just creates a lot of issues of, to be quite honest with you as a parent, not knowing where kids are at certain periods of the day. And even though our high school does a really good job of closing the gap during those end periods between first and second semester and at the end of the second semester, it will would be great if we could get our calendars all on the same page. The other thing is what I've learned in my year and a half here, you can't count on weather. Tomorrow's a great example of that. When they say it's going to snow an inch, it snows 15. And we have to meet the 1,025 reg when it comes to K-8, but that becomes a day issue for us. And that's not having the flexibility to start a little bit earlier and to be able to account for some of the weather days that we have during the course of the year. It can put a strain on our calendar. So what I've requested from Ms. York is for you, your board, to consider a resolution that our board passed last Tuesday in support of our school system having some flexibility with our calendar. I'm happy to announce that Representative Yarborough on February 13th announced the filing of a bill for us to have some flexibility with that. And I will be spending some time with him and Senator Woodard on Thursday in hopes that I can bring with him consensus in Person County that we do need to have the flexibility.
All right.
Vote for approval.
I would like to say that I fully support this. I fully supported it in 2004 when this all started. It made no sense then, and it makes no sense now. It's a huge problem, and there's a simple solution. Politics needs to get out of the way of our local school calendars. And as you were speaking, schools locally and in different locales, from Manio to Murphy, need the flexibility to adjust to their existing conditions around the state, and as well as aligning with community college. And you know that with the transfer credits now, that's extremely important. And so again, it's a simple solution, and maybe getting exams in before the Christmas break is a big thing. So again, I totally, fully support it.
And we do have a calendar next year where we have limited our first semester so that we can get exams in. What I will say is that can have a positive and negative impact. The positive impact, we can get the exams in. The negative impact is we're going to limit some of the courses that we would normally offer in the fall so that we can have a compacted curriculum for the fall. One thing I will say to you is we have over 15 students that wanted to early graduate to extend their careers beyond the school building, either at a university, but most importantly to our military. And because our semester ends in the end of January, some of these kids had to delay their entry because we were not able to certify graduation until the late January date, which limits our kids on some of the things that they can do after high school when they had plans.
Is there anybody else who wants to speak to this issue? If not, we have a motion to approve. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Lori Oakley would bring us up to date on land use tools.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I'm excited to talk to you about two new projects staff has been working on for the past year and a half with other county staff members. The first one I'm going to talk about is the development suitability maps. As soon as he's able to pull up the screen. I need my PowerPoint presentation. Thank you. So the first item that I'm going to talk about are the development suitability maps. And to give you a little bit of background, back in 2016, the county adopted a farmland preservation plan, and one of the recommendations of the plan was to adopt land use and design standards that focus on land preservation and agricultural sustainability. Specifically, the goal was to produce a farmland and land development suitability map to help residents and officials to identify lands for development, preservation, and agricultural uses. The Planning Department has been working with the GIS, Cooperative Extension, Soil and Water, and Economic Development over the past year and a half to create 3 different development suitability maps that will be beneficial to citizens. Staff members from the aforementioned departments utilize the ranking system on these maps to identify potential zones for agricultural conservation and development within the county. The GIS department staff was then able to compile all of the data on 3 separate interactive maps for each of the areas of studies. And these maps will be available to the public through the GIS website for citizens to use for land use research, and they're actually already on the GIS website. And this is just kind of a screenshot of what you would see if you logged on today on the web address at the bottom of the screen. This is the agricultural suitability map. Bless you.
Thank you.
And Paul Westfall from Cooperative Extension will briefly walk you through this map in just a moment. This is the conservation suitability map, and Nancy McCormick from Soil and Water is here to demonstrate that map. And lastly, we have the development suitability map, which will be presented by Sherry Wilborn with Economic Development. Before Paul demonstrates the agricultural suitability map, I wanted to briefly take you through the process of how the items are ranked on each of the maps. So first off, staff determined the landscape characteristics that were important for that particular area of study. And then we went about acquiring different sets of GIS data for it. Each item was assigned scores, and then the scores were added to produce an overall suitability for the county. And the example I have on the screen in front of you is for agricultural suitability. So the first thing, or one of the things that we looked at, is staff looked at the existing slope for the property and ranked it accordingly. 5 for flat land, as it is typically more ideal for agricultural uses, and 1 for moderately sloping land. Next.
What is the other? Gullies?
The other. What was the other?
That's anything typically steep or classified as water or dam or an urban land complex, which is not useful for agriculture.
Next, a value of 1 was assigned if it was included in a VAD, which is a voluntary agricultural district. Next, it was assigned a value based on land cultivation. It received a 4 if the land was cultivated with crops, and 3 if it was pasture or hay. And then these scores were tallied to create an overall suitability map. In this case, we're looking at the agricultural suitability, but again, we have 3 different maps with different values that we will go over each of them for you. And the first one that we have, as I said, is the agricultural suitability map, and I'm hoping now Kelly's able to, what's wrong with our smartboard?
Can't pull up smartboard.
You'll have to turn uncomfortably to see the screen in the back. You tell me what to click, I can draw.
Okay, well, I'm going to let Paul come up and try to, we had this nice presentation when we were going to play on the smartboard for you and show you actually how it worked if you logged on to GIS.
Well, good morning. It's my pleasure to talk about the agricultural suitability map that we've developed through the use of importing a lot of data from other sources, not trying to reinvent the wheel, but trying to package that wheel where we've got it in one spot for people who are interested in agriculture and conservation and development to look at in our GIS system. So I think that a lot of work has been done, a lot of data that existed was imported, so that turned out to be good. We decided to use the parameters that Oakley described for agriculture and based a lot of this on the NRCS web soil survey. And when you see some of these darker colors, that means it would score higher, of course. Some of the lighter scores maybe not. When you look at it, it kind of gives you a good mental picture of what overall Person County looks like as far as where the agriculture is located and where the potentials are. Now, I'll say this can be important for our standpoint, so I don't know if you can zoom in on just pick an area. It's got some variable colors in it, I guess.
There's smartboards up.
Oh, smartboard is up. How about that? I know it's kind of washed out on the smartboard, but as an example, we get people coming into our office, and I'm sure other offices in the county also. I'm looking to establish an agricultural operation. I want to put a small farm in. I want to have some crops. I want to have some chickens. I want to have some sheep or goats or cattle that come in. So by having a tool like this available, it makes it easier for us as far as finding, okay, what type of soils or what type of slopes are going to be more suitable to the type of operation that's being described. Now, this can be people wanting to purchase property coming into Person County. It can be people who have inherited property through succession and family. And we do get that question more times than we want to think about, maybe. But we can zoom in on a particular area when a person identifies either where they're located or would like to identify an area where they would like to look for some property to establish a farm on. And we're trying to get there, I think. I was trying to get it where we could actually look at parcels.
We're having
For instance, somebody wants to grow horticultural crops. Perhaps a steep slope area would not be suitable for that. I know all the soils in Person County are considered important agriculturally. They're also considered highly erodible, so we'd like to match the operation with a suitable site, and having this particular tool available would help us to be able to do that without having to go to a whole lot of different websites and take time to surf around. As you can see on the board now, we've got it zoomed in to where we can see some individual parcels. Some of those parcels have multiple colors within them, and that's due to the variability in the soils and in the slopes in those. For instance, the lighter areas may be a steeper hillside of greater than 6% slope. The darker areas may include some 0 to 6% slope, a higher suitability soil, and maybe in a voluntary agricultural district in order to rank that higher ranking and that darker color. When you click on an individual property, it comes up with the tax map, and there's supposed to be a caret up there we can click on to see exactly how those scores were made. So it's not
and I can't see either.
technology works great when it works great. So is this
Lord, it's to the right of the board hanging on the wall.
Excuse me. I'm not seeing the caret anyway.
Yeah, I can't see.
Out of the little.
It should be next to that.
Right here.
Yeah.
Can you try clicking on a different parcel? No. Having all kinds of
We
difficulties.
did go through this last week to make sure it would work right, so here we are, and it's not working exactly right.
It worked
but,
great last week.
We're doing our best. But anyway, we're looking at this as a tool that we can excuse me, work with either existing or prospective landowners to help them determine the suitability of an area for what they would like to do. As far as establishing a business or continuing an enterprise or anything else they would like to look at. That's pretty much.
Is this something we got to purchase?
No,
This is something that's been existed.
Already.
We developed this from, staff created this, we pulled from existing data that was out there. For instance, as I mentioned, the NRCS Web Soil Survey was a very good data package that we could use that was already out there. We just put it into a package that made it easier for us to access.
This is available on the GIS website.
Yeah, I saw that on there the other day.
Yeah.
And this was created by our people.
Yes.
I commend you.
So, and all the folks in the planning department done a great job with all this. So.
Paul, can you just say, how often do you have someone come in?
We get 3 or 4 people a week coming in to say, I have some property, what can I do with it? So, it's a matter of, okay, let's take a look at it, what's your location, and if they come in with something that looks like it's got a lot of lighter colors in it, we might want to consider keeping that in a permanent vegetation to prevent erosion. If it's in a darker area on this rating system, it might be more suitable to establish in horticulture or field crops. So, or establishing, you could still do some pastures or raise animals on that too. So better soils are better suited for most things. So. Okay.
Yes, yeah, thank you.
Anybody got any questions?
Well, great job.
Thank you.
Good morning. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the conservation map, and again, this was developed the same way as the ag map was that Paul just spoke about. We went through different criteria and came up with rankings, and that is how we developed this map. If you can see, the darker green areas are the areas that are more in tune to be conserved, and if you can kind of notice, the Falls Lake area is kind of standing out, and that is due to the rules in place for development in those areas. Some of the other criteria that we use: cemeteries, deciduous forest stands, your watershed rules, flood zones, managed areas that are areas that are already managed. Your parks and open spaces were ranked a little higher because they're already conserved. Soils, it's kind of the opposite of your ag soils. Your poorly drained soils are better to conserve those areas because they're not going to be developed on, and also your steeper slopes are more in tune to be conserved. Of course, we did exclude the airport, your industrial park, we excluded the landfill, and we excluded the mega site, since that is kind of already set aside for future planning. One way that I envision that this map could be used is, I know Ms. Tate spoke a couple of meetings ago about the stormwater fees. And one option was given to y'all was conservation easements. And this map, if you decided to go that route, this map would be highly used in developing those conservation easements and ranking easements. Basically, if you decided to do a conservation easement program and put money into that program, then whatever board or committee was overseeing that could go to this map and look at the ranking and say, well, this area is more in tune and more ranked higher, so we should maybe concentrate our funding in this area versus another area. So when you open up to giving conservation easements, you anticipate several people applying, and some people just want the money, not necessarily that land is a good place to conserve. So that is one idea that I think that this map would be utilized. It's also, it's just a cool feature to have to offer to the public. If you own land, maybe you're looking for some hunting land to purchase. If it's suitable for conservation, then it's going to have wildlife in it, so it would be good for hunting and other recreation use.
Is this going to be in the layers part of the GIS, or this be separate by itself?
It's its own separate.
Yeah, I noticed it. I pulled it up the other day. I noticed I saw it on the right, so it'd be standalone.
Any questions on this?
This carrot is here.
Yes,
Oh, the
I was
carrot.
just going to point out, so on the screen, and you can't see my clicker, but up where the little X is, it might be easier over here to show you, the little toggle switch is what it would pull up for our last map, but if someone were to pull this up and click on a parcel, they can click the little right toggle, and it's going to pull up how in each category it was ranked, so you get an idea of how it came to that overall score.
Any questions for me?
All
And
right.
again, Sally did. We were there to give her input, but she really did the majority of the work. So I appreciate that.
The last map that we worked on before Sherry comes up is the development suitability map. And it was, if you'll pull that up, it was probably the most challenging map for us to work on as a group, just because of the data that is available to us. For example, utilities and infrastructure, existing infrastructure, a lot of that data was not available. And if it was, if we knew, for example, that there was existing water, we didn't know if it was at capacity. So we really struggled with this map. We did not reference our current land use plan because it is 20 years old, it is outdated. And also there are several parcels on our land use map that aren't identified. So we had very limited data when we were working on this map.
but it still turned out rather well, and Sherry will kind of go over it. I think it's a good base map, again, for any future development. And Sherry will briefly talk this map through with you. Yeah, Lori basically just indicated that what the issues were that we had. Sally came to me a couple of weeks ago and said, you know, what should we look for with the development map? And of course I said where there's infrastructure. But the problem with that is if you look for electricity, it says no information available. If you look at gas, no information available. And as Lori said, even though we know where there's water and sewer in the county, it doesn't speak to whether we have capacity or what the capacity is. So that's the difficulty with trying to plot this on a map with the data that Sally has. If you look up there, the darker blue areas show what ranks the highest, and I think that would be what you would expect to see in any town USA, you know, right down the middle of our main thoroughfare and in the heart of the county. So Sally and I talked about what we could do to kind of add to this, and I would say we can incorporate our opportunity zones as something to consider, and to also spread that out to other highways, 158 and 57, to look along those corridors. We do have good infrastructure there as well. But this is a little more tricky when you're talking about plotting on a map with public information what's going to be the best areas to look at for industrial development. For example, if you look at, you know, spreading out there from 501, some of that is residential subdivisions, and one area would show up more favorable than the other simply because of its proximity to 501. Any questions about that?
You've seen the two, industrial development and farmland preservation. You can't get this information here. You can't put both on there. That shows the infrastructure.
Like have an overlay of the two.
Right.
The power companies and the gas company will not share that information with us, and so it's not that we didn't want to, it's that we couldn't.
Neither will the city.
Correct, and because this is public, we're unable to put locations of city-owned infrastructure on the map as well.
Can you pull up sewer lines in Durham County? I didn't think so. All right, we got any questions for anybody that's been here this morning? Is that everything, Laura?
That was the first part. Again, I'd like to thank all those departments. We've been working together on this project for the past year, including the Assistant County Manager. I think it came together really well. Secondly, I want to talk briefly about North Carolina Wildlife Resources Grant that we received. Specifically the document that you have, and I want to reemphasize it's a draft document that I included in your packet, but I wanted to go ahead and get it in your hand so you can see it, that we've been also working on a conservation-based land use guidance document for Person County. So to briefly go over that, before I get into that document, it talks a lot about the Green Growth Toolbox, and some of you might be saying, well, what exactly is that? The Green Growth Toolbox is a non-regulatory initiative led by the Wildlife Diversity Program of North Carolina Wildlife Resource Commission. And basically it consists of a handbook, GIS data, a website, and it provides North Carolina's and cities and counties with land use planning methods and case studies of how to conserve wildlife and natural resources as they grow. And I have the website listed on the screen. And to give you a little bit of background on this, going back to 2015, Person County hosted a Green Growth Toolbox workshop, which was attended by both county and city staff. Participants received a toolbox data package, like I just described, for helping to guide land use planning projects. In 2017, Person County received a grant from the North Carolina Wildlife Resource Commission's Partner for Green Growth in order to study the natural habitat along a corridor that extended from downtown Roxborough south to Durham County. The contractor that was hired used to complete the survey work surveyed the county-owned land that's adjacent to the corridor, and also 10 residents along the corridor volunteered to have their parcels surveyed, which was a little over 1,000 acres, to identify the different types of wildlife and vegetation on those parcels. The GIS department then used that data to create another interactive web map detailing the findings. And this is just a snippet of what it looks like. Again, this is on our GIS website right now. Again, it's a separate document underneath the other GIS tools. And Sally will briefly take you through this interactive map with you here shortly. As part of the grant requirement, the county did have to have 4 public information and input sessions. They were hosted throughout 2017, where we had 129 interested residents, business owners, and county staff and conservation professionals attend those workshops. Recommendations from the document include adopting new conservation easements. That's one of the most effective methods for preserving priority habitats, is simply placing that land in a conservation easement. Another recommendation was to develop a comprehensive conservation plan that details strategies for building awareness and protection of Person County's natural resources. And one of the recommendations of the Farmland Preservation Plan, which I briefly mentioned, was the development suitability study maps, which we just went over with you. So we've already met a portion of that goal. And another possible way of meeting this goal would be to possibly include a chapter in the new land use plan about conservation planning. And lastly, amending the planning ordinance, the zoning ordinance, and the subdivision ordinance to better protect the county's natural resources. And that could include tree protection ordinances, solar ordinances, stream protection ordinances, and so on. And now what we'll do, hopefully if it works, is have Sally go through the interactive web map with you and briefly discuss some of the findings of the field work.
A portion of the deliverables for this grant that Person County received was this interactive web map. And so this is something that we developed in conjunction with 2 summer interns in the GIS department, as well as an outside contractor who assisted us in identifying different species as we surveyed these areas. And so essentially we went into the field with a GPS unit and camera, found an area that looked sort of interesting, sort of diverse, maybe had some old growth timber, and we stopped for a minute. We listened for birds, we counted different species of trees, looked for any sort of outstanding features or trees or you know, riverine features that we could locate, and then recorded those on a map. And so what you see here is kind of the result of that. On the right-hand side of the screen is a map, and all these green blobs, the bigger the blob, the more diverse the area is. And so that's based off of you know, how many different species of tree did we find, how many different species of mammal, or I'm not a wildlife expert, so I may be butchering this, but so the larger the blob, essentially, the more types of species we found in these locations. And so, for example, in this location, this is survey point 44, and it was described as a multi-story tree species area with all of those different species present. It's at an elevation of 532 feet above sea level. And then we recorded some photos, and so that's what the photos look like in each of the different cardinal directions. What you'll also see on the map are these little red pinpoints. And each one of these little red pinpoints corresponds to a photo on the left-hand side of the screen. So if you were to click it, you get information about what was found at that location. And so this is just an example of the different types of tree bark that you can find in a location such as this. And they've all been identified with their Latin names and their more common names. Or you can choose to click on an item, click on one of these photos instead to learn about it. And so this is a particular type of fungus known as chicken of the woods. I thought it's because it looked like a chicken, Other people say it's because it tastes like chicken. I didn't try it. And so we've got information about vegetation, different types of habitats. So we do have some unusual habitats here. For example, this is an interesting rock outcrop that we came across that had some very unusual plants on it that are only found in certain areas of North Carolina. And then we've also got information about wildlife, lots of information about wildlife. We found a red-spotted newt. I'm glad someone was there to tell me what that is. But we found, evidence of different types of things, whether it was a visual evidence from seeing the bird or actually hearing, the calls of the animals. Other things you would expect, like, box turtles and snakes and things like that. And the intent here is for this to be an educational tool for the public to understand why their land is so valuable. And hopefully we've been able to convey that in a way that is useful to them and to you all and to staff as well. Any questions?
Who are you targeting users on?
That's a great question. All of the landowners were very interested in what they had on their land. Some of these landowners hadn't been on their land in decades. They had not walked their land and were unaware that they had trees, upwards of 5 feet in diameter, and that's our intern as well. I would think this would be an excellent tool for school children.
Yeah.
I don't know how we necessarily get into the school system to show these types of things, but that would be an excellent avenue.
Shouldn't be a problem.
Okay.
They could go on GIS.
We can make that happen.
Yes. Lots of parents here.
Anything else?
All right, now this in no way changes any ordinance or anything.
This was just a voluntary survey of the different types of habitats that are located in these areas.
But paid for by the grant.
Yeah.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Well, I appreciate all your hard work and everybody else connected to it. I think it's going to be very beneficial going forward. The GIS that we have is a magnificent tool if you know how to use it, you know how to get into it. I learn something every time I click on it. But there's an abundance of information there that I don't think a whole lot of people quite understand, but this certainly goes great addition. So commend you on your work.
Excellent job. Thank you. I just want to say that I appreciate all the work that these departments have done, and they've worked really well together. And this is really above and kind of beyond their normal duties, because this was a grant that you all, again, approved about 1.5 years ago, and they've been doing this on top of what they normally do. So I really appreciate them working well together on this. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Jones, if you would advise us on our reappraisal.
Good morning. I hate to follow Sally and Laura and their flashy presentation, because I really don't have a flashy presentation for this
You
morning.
have pictures of birds or wildlife?
No, maybe leave it up for entertainment purposes. I'm here to talk to you this morning about a contract for 2021 reappraisal. 2021 seems like a long time away, but a project this size actually takes just under 2 years, so we need to go ahead and get started on that. We're required to do a reappraisal every 8 years at minimum. Our last appraisal 2013, so now we're definitely scheduled for 2021. Just taking just on 2 years means let's get started now. Probably the first step in that is to negotiate a contract. So we went out with RFP, and I want to give Philip Christie, my real property appraiser, credit for spearheading the RFP process. He actually developed the request for proposal in-house. We mailed this RFP to all 16 approved reappraisal vendors that are on the North Carolina Department of Revenue list. So North Carolina Department of Revenue, NCDOR, keeps a list of all the appraisal firms that they think we should work with. The 16 mailings generated 6 proposals back to our office. We actually had 9 criteria that we were going to look at as far as if they were important, what we wanted to see in the proposal. And I feel Philip did a great job on issuing the RFP. We had very limited questions, and all 6 proposals identified how they would handle all 9 of these items. I after going through the RFP process and what we did on there, we took Philip Christie, our real property appraiser manager, which Johnny Kuchar is also with us today. He went through it, he's our field appraiser, and myself, we went through these independently and then ranked each one of the 6 to figure out which one we thought was best. And we used this 9 criteria that we specified in RFP. And we came up with Pearson Appraisers being our selected vendor. And then we reached out to Pearson to negotiate a contract. Of course, RFP helped us negotiate a better price because they knew they were competing against their colleagues. Pearson identified Randy Willis as their project manager if they did get the contract. Mr. Randy Willis is with us also. One reason we chose Pearson Appraisals, they've been in the business for 35 years. They've done over 200 turnkey reappraisal projects in North Carolina alone. They've operated in over 50 of the 100 counties in North Carolina. Most of those counties they've done multiple times. So as far as a company that you can count on to get the job done, there's no other company out there that I will compare them to. If you have questions for me, for staff, or...
They have experience in this county already, don't
Yes, sir. They've done Person County many times.
What was the 9 criteria that you used?
It was actually listed in your agenda abstract, but there was the clarity of the proposal, the firm's understanding of the project objectives, their recommended approach to the project, the qualifications to perform the work, qualifications of the project manager, their knowledge and demonstrated experience in North Carolina, how familiar they were with North Carolina laws, their ability to perform the project based on how many other projects they've completed successfully, and proof of like projects that were done on time and at budget or under budget. So those 9 criteria we felt were very important.
When will we adopt a schedule of values for 2021?
Schedule of values is normally done very late in the cycle, and that's because you're trying to make sure that you're achieving market for January 1st of 2021. We'll go ahead and have a schedule of values that we're working with, but they will not be presented to the board till late October or November of 2020.
Okay. Would that be the, you would come with your recommendation of schedule of values, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and then you'd hand it over to us, and then we would tweak it as we see fit.
It's actually open for public inspection for 30 days and to the board.
Okay.
And we publish a copy on our website. We normally put a copy of the county manager's office. And I think in the past we put one at the library. And it's open for public inspection. And then there's actually an appeal process. If someone doesn't like the schedule of values, they can actually take it to the state and appeal it there. There are chances to, of course, tweak it later. Tweaking would be if you see something that we could not appraise appropriately using that schedule. So if there's any areas of concern, it would be better to address them before the schedule is presented, because when you change something in the schedule, you could affect 27,000 parcels, depending on what you're looking at. But we could definitely look at the schedule and what you want to achieve. The biggest thing about it is you're required by law to achieve true market. So tweaking a lot that would bring values down or bring values up may make you not be at market value. So be very careful what you tweak at the last minute. We're happy to go over with you what the schedule does. If there's any areas of concern that you think we ought to pay special attention to based on the last one, we'd be glad to do that. One thing that comes to mind that I want to work on would be the non-perk sites. Non-perk sites we've always done at half price of the build site, and I think that may be a little high. If you can't build on a lot, it's probably worth similar value to farmland rather than just a half price of a building site. So we're always thinking about ways that the market has changed, things we should incorporate. But you're tweaking it at the last minute would be a little bit dangerous.
All right, so with that being said, can this board be involved with at the very beginning of the process as when we start formulating the schedule? And so when we do release it, it's well known among this board. Schedule value is the most, you can have evaluation, but schedule value is the most important thing regarding, because that's where the appraisal's getting their values from.
But it's somewhat, the schedule values is the tool, and the biggest goal of schedule values is to make sure you can appraise every property in the county at market value. I think our schedule we had last time allowed for that. You could have adjusted up or down using depreciation, using different land factors to get the value. How early in the process would you want the commissioners involved? We'll have to actually have a schedule of values that we're using probably August when we first start field work, but that will be tweaked many times over the next year by our own staff As we apply that schedule to properties and we determine that it's not achieving market, it's either too high or too low. So actually, before we have a document ready would be October 1 before we actually have something that really shows you. That's 2020. Let you be involved as early in the process as you like, but we'll be changing things also. So what you see may not be what was presented in November.
I just think the commissioners need to have a hands-on part of it. As you know, 2013 was my first reevaluation, and it was a learning experience for me, and learned much going through the Machinery Act and just understanding the way things operate better. So I think it's prudent for this board to get ahead and be involved. So when 2021 does happen, and there will be complaints, as there were in 2013, we can have a full, better understanding, because in 2013, I can say that I really was not fully knowledgeable to know exactly what, how significant the schedule values was. So that's the reason I'm bringing it up.
One thing I would propose is maybe a couple of months before we're ready to present the schedule to the board, that we will show the sales we had in the last 12 months and what property sold for. And right now we had about 500 sales last year that we're looking at. But show the sales we had in the last 12 months, and then show the schedule values and how the schedule values got to that sales price. So if we can show the sales price and the schedule values are very similar, I think that would be very supportive data for you to see. So we use the schedule values to show the sales and show, because this property sold for that, and this property is not unique, and this property is an arm's length transaction, and the schedule values gives you a very similar value. It won't be exactly the same, but very similar. That will give them confidence the schedule value is accurate.
We can spend a little more time discussing the schedule values and making sure that the board understands it. It's really supposed to reflect the market and not so much a political discussion.
Is it really prudent or best to do this every 8 years rather than every 4 years? Kind of a midterm thing?
Well, the issue with this revaluation, of course, is the cost. And it's going to cost you the same amount to do it every 4 years or every 8 years. What we have to do is watch the market. So we do what we call a sales ratio. We're comparing sales price to the appraised value. Even though we did one 6 years ago, soon to be 8, we're 94% accurate on values, which means we're about 6% under market. If that number was 80%, I would have been here myself asking to do a revaluation sooner. Or if we've been 110%, I've been in the same situation. We don't want to. We want to create equity. We want everyone to be taxed at the same percentage of value, and we want to keep that within 10% up or down. So we don't want to have the values really far off. Right now, we're 6% undervalued on average.
I think Mr. Payette makes a good point. The one thing that I learned going through the last reevaluation was what you have to use to establish your values. And, you know, the conversation at that time was that the reevaluation that we were going to do in 05 that got postponed had higher values than actual market values at the time of the reappraisal. And I may be off on my dates a little
Yes, sir.
bit.
That was 2009.
But the one thing that I think most people didn't quite understand is you can't use a bankruptcy or a foreclosure in establishing your values.
That's correct.
And most people need to be aware of that, because that is specifically spelled out in the Machinery Act. And so, you know, you caught a lot of grief for that purpose alone. Some of it from me.
You were fair about it, though.
But, you know, hopefully our market won't be turned upside down during this appraisal, so I would hope that it would go much smoother. Although people are going to still disagree with their values, but if you ask them would they sell it for that, they say no. So, you know, it's a short discussion. But I think y'all done a pretty good job considering the circumstances in the last thing.
I think a pretty good one.
Philip
Chairman
and
Newell was
Philip
probably,
and I had some pretty good discussions, so.
a pretty good one. Chairman Newell was probably excellent from the rest of it. I'll take that. And Commissioner Pereira knows from his banking side, if you use the bankruptcy sales to finance a new home that was in bankruptcy, no one ever get a loan. So that it's not just the Machinery Act, it's the whole appraisal market that says a bankruptcy sale just doesn't count. Well, 500 sales last year in a good-looking market right now. No one wants to do revaluation when you don't have a lot of sales. The tax office doesn't want to do it, and the citizens don't want it to happen because you can't. It's part of the established market. So I think we're looking at a very good timing to do a 2021.
Well, if I don't miss my guess, if we do a rebuy now, values are not going to change a great deal, are they?
They will not. Now, I did say we were 6% undervalued, but we are skewed there because most of our sales in the southern end of the county, and that's showing that those properties are undervalued, but the rest of the county, Woodsdale area, northern Person County is not overvalued. So we're not going to see a huge increase if we did it today. And we can only hope the markets continue to rise. And the biggest thing is to make sure everything's fairly assessed. My goal is not to make sure the values are high or make sure we have an increase. Of course, that's always nice. But just to make sure everybody's 100% sales market assessed. But
Well, you basically give us a value that we set a tax rate from, so that's your job, and it's up to us to set the rate. So if you double the prices, we'd lower the rates. So.
And we wouldn't have anybody happy, even though the tax bill didn't change, which is interesting how that works. So I did have a
I don't know. A
member.
lot of people feel a lot richer if you send them bills that the house is worth twice as much.
They will be in office complaining that. I did pass this contract through the county attorney. He's made sure it met all the legal qualifications there. There's the bonding and things in there that's required, and county attorney's already agreed those are appropriate. So,
Have you got a figure on what that would be?
the bonding or the actual contract?
The contract.
Actually, it's in the agenda. The contract with Pearson. It's $467,500. Right, just under $500,000.
Is that
467,500.
Yes, sir.
is that in line with what we had budgeted?
We've been setting aside money
Mm-hmm.
to cover the contract, and so we'll be fine.
There's a statute requires you to set aside money annually for this, and if we're able to get this contract at 467, we would be under what we set aside.
Okay.
Now, among the 6 that you received, was this the cheapest of the cost proposals?
It was not the cheapest, it was not the most expensive, it was kind of midpoint. And the cheapest one was a guy who had never done a revaluation. He had 2 employees. He was going to build an office based on where he got his first contract, and he was going to hire people once he got his first contract. So you can see how that compares to a company that's been in business for 35 years, 40 employees, 200 projects. And then the most expensive one, of course, it's very similar. He had 4 employees. He didn't have the software in place that was needed to do the field work, and all of his employees, all but himself, actually worked for other counties in my position, which I couldn't understand. I couldn't do a revaluation in Castle County and hold my job here and do either one of them effectively. That was interesting how that group, it's some older assessors who are probably planning on retirement soon, but they had generated a firm and they were going to do a revaluation on the side. And Person County deserves better than that. That was our highest bidder. You see what we're looking at when we're looking within the whole process.
Well, the one thing I like about them is that they probably know this county as well as we do,
But they know a lot about this county, yes, sir.
unless they've rotated. The last ones have rotated out, but
The project manager with us today, Mr. Randy Willis, has been with Pearson many, many years. He worked in Person County back when John Rudd was here. If you remember the name John Rudd. So in 2001, he was here doing work with us. So he's been in Person County before.
And he's the lead person,
He's our project manager, yes, sir.
and he will operate out of your office or?
Randy, we didn't really talk about where your office would be. Most of it will be done in our office. We do have capability of doing some work from home, work from other locations. But as a project manager, I'm sure he'll be on site quite often.
who will handle the E&R
That's actually done by Pearson also. If you remember the last ENR, we quite often had a Pearson person built in the room with us. So he'll have, either Randy will be there or someone representing Pearson. And they will also represent us through this contract. They actually will go with us to PTC. So we had to go to the state appeal court. And Ron and I, Philip, and them many times. Pearson will also support us there too, which is very helpful. We didn't have that support last time.
Okay. All right, do we have to vote on this?
Authorize approval of the contract is what we need.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the contract.
Okay, any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Any opposed?
Thank you.
Go to work. All right, Ms. York.
Good morning, Commissioners. I am bringing some policy updates before you for discussion this morning. Last summer, the staff surveyed all of our county departments. We were assessing the morale, the leadership, and the support in each of the various departments. And the policy updates I'm bringing before you came directly from feedback that we received in the survey. So I think this is important for our organization to understand that they have a voice and that they are impacting policy decisions for the entire organization. So I'm pretty excited about having the opportunity to reflect some of the feedback that we heard. So the first policy came directly from the survey. We're calling it our volunteer leave policy. This is a brand new policy. We've never had this here to my knowledge, but I did find in our research that many other organizations have these in place. Our employees, our full-time employees, would be granted a new bank of leave. It would be up to 24 hours annually, and they would be allowed to volunteer in nonprofits and other community organizations so long as they received approval from their supervisor and their department head. There's no financial impact to the county for this, and we have the ability to verify their hours worked with the organization that they're working with, and any abuse of this is subject to disciplinary action, which is all spelled out in the policy, which is attached in your packet. The volunteer leave does not accrue, so it's 24 hours annually. If you don't use it, you lose it, and it starts over the next year. It also doesn't pay out. If an employee separates their employment with us, this isn't a payout for that either. So we would like this policy to become effective July 1, and this is helping to strengthen the relationship with employees and community by allowing them to do some volunteer work without it being a detriment to their department. So supervisors and department heads do have discretion. If it's going to be a hardship on the department, then it may not work out for the employee to be able to participate. Our second policy is something that we've had some flexibility in terms of allowing employees to do a flex schedule or a compressed work schedule. What we heard from the survey was that employees wanted a more formalized policy in place so that they understood why some employees were able to work various hours and some were not. So we put this in place just to formalize the process and the options that employees had for their workday. There are two options here, excuse me, a compressed work schedule or a flex work schedule. And again, it has to be conducive to the operations of the department. It's up to the supervisor and the department head to be able to grant or deny these. And in some departments, this is absolutely not an option. That could be due to the number of staff members that they have. So it doesn't suit every single department. It cannot be at the detriment of customer service or at the operations of the department for employees to be able to work this. And we have had this in place, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 years. We've had different employees in different departments working various flex schedules. And so this helps us have a formal policy that has to be signed off and agreed to by both the supervisor and the department head. Again, there's no financial impact to this policy, and we wanted to make it effective March 1. It's something already in place. We just now have something in writing to make it a little bit more formalized and consistent across departments. And then the third policy is really just some new language that I would like to add to the county's personnel policy. And this is a new section in the policy that we'll call parental leave. We are seeing this as both a recruitment tool and a retention tool. It is highly competitive among other organizations that already have this in place to attract employees. And this helps new parents, either through birth or adoption, it gives 30 days of paid leave that runs consistent with their FMLA leave. And this helps sort of lessen the stress on new parents who are trying to figure out how are they going to be able to take time off to help them through this transition. This gets rid of one stressor by granting them 30 days of paid leave, so long as they return to full-time status with the county after their leave. And again, this is open to full-time employees who have successfully completed their probationary status. Now this one does have a financial impact, and we're calculating that based on the number of employees that are taking family leave based on birth or adoption, and just using an average salary. So we're expecting somewhere around an impact of about $50,000 annually to grant these additional 30 days of paid leave to employees. So they would not be required to use their sick time or another leave. They would use this instead for 30 days. If they'd like to go beyond that, they would then use sick leave or annual leave to cover that time. So due to the financial impact of this policy, we're wanting this one to become effective July 1st so that we can have some budgeting done ahead of that. So those are the three policy updates that I wanted to ask for your feedback on, and once I'm assured that you are okay, then I will roll this out to the organization. At this point, it's only been discussed with department heads who have helped us think through the logistics and any loopholes and make sure that we're in agreement to be able to implement this on an organizational-wide basis.
So on the policy,
Go ahead. Sorry.
on the policy one, educational institute. So if an employee has a student going on a field trip and they have to be a chaperone, would that qualify?
That would qualify.
Okay.
On the parental leave, is
I'm
that
sorry.
for all employees,
On
male and female?
On the parental?
Hmm?
Yes, it is.
Okay. What if they're both?
Yeah, we actually addressed that in here because we have that situation already. And it says that if both parents work for the county and want to use parental leave, it cannot exceed the 30 days combined.
That's pretty on the spot with, I know, with other corporate policies
It
as
is.
well.
We found some that are more generous and some that are less generous, but this was pretty consistent excuse me, with what we saw.
If you're in Ireland, it would be a year.
That's right. Yeah, other
Well,
places
now,
are
the
more
federal
generous.
government probably fixed to pass something like this anyway.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The control of voluntary leave policy, the first one up there,
Yes,
you
sir.
use the word ability. You have the ability to, does that mean that you aren't going to scrutinize that until you see a flag someplace and how those volunteer hours are being used or conducted?
It gives us the flexibility at any time, excuse me,
It's a great
to
thing.
monitor that.
Volunteers are becoming scarce.
They are.
I don't have any problem with it, but
They are.
there seems to be several layers there to
Sure.
supervision of that, which is, okay, I don't have a problem with it.
It does require multiple layers for that very reason.
I
And
got
subject
one
to
with you.
discipline.
Does this annual leave accumulate?
The volunteer leave?
No, the last thing you
Oh,
talked
the
about.
parental leave? No. No, it's sort of a take it or leave it. It doesn't. You have to use it in the block of 30 days. Is that right, Angie? It doesn't accrue. Use it while you're on FMLA. It requires a doctor's note in order to use that.
I got a question about
Yeah.
in your regulations of it, when it says if an employee is on a probationary status, he or she is not eligible for a flex schedule. Think about that. I'm not saying this good or bad, but I'm thinking about it. You hire an employee and you put them in a department, and that's, for some reason, they're able to do the flex schedule more than the others. You don't want to get one in there that you can't let do that, will interfere with what you're doing. If I'm making myself clear, let's say that Russell's on a flex schedule and he's got somebody working over there in that department and he needs to work with them. He may need them on the same schedule he's on for that, maybe for a few days or for a week or for maybe not at all. But I'm just, sometimes when you put it in there that they're not eligible for something, you know, I'm just pointing that out. That might not be a problem.
So the probationary status is when you're first hired. You have to go through a 6-month probationary status, and that is just to 9 months. I'm sorry, 9 months. Thank you for the correction. Department heads do 12 months. Regular employees do 9 months. That is just to ensure that it's a good fit for both.
Right, I understand
employee.
that, but if there's some reason that you needed to use them on that flex schedule for 2 days, you got it written in here where they can't do it. And I don't know whether you really want to do that or not. That's up to you.
I think the department head is given enough discretion to make those sort of adjustments. This is for...
And if you put in there unless approved by the department head or the manager or something, I think you would cover yourself. But I'm saying that you're making it so rigid in that part of it, and you may never need it. But I don't really care. I'm just pointing that out.
Gotcha.
Because as sure as you don't do it, it'll come up.
So a 2-day adjustment in a schedule is not what this policy is about. This is for something that is regularly recurring that changes that
probationary status person could do about it what the department head wants them to do is what you're telling me.
If in your example, if it's a 2-day adjustment, the department head has the discretion to take care of
I
that.
just pointed that out because it looks pretty rigid.
But probationary is what it is.
It is
There's a reason
something
for
we take very seriously.
It's not the same as full-time employees.
It is not.
So I think you need that.
Other questions about any of these policies? I have one more policy that I'm going to bring at your next meeting. I didn't want to throw too much at you at one time, and that is a conversion for our cell phones to go from stipends to county-owned. And so stay tuned for that discussion at your next meeting. Of course, there is some financial impact with that, so we'll address that separately.
We
But I
talked
wanted to-
about that at the retreat.
It came up at the retreat, and we'll spend some time talking about that at your next meeting. I wanted to make you aware of these policies. I have the ability to adjust policies for the organization, but it's important that we're all aware of those changes in case questions come your way, and particularly with the financial impact of the parental leave policy. I wanted to make sure that the board was able to support these before we move forward.
All right, we need to vote on that then, don't we?
I can't remember if I'm asking. Let me check my abstract.
Yes, that's just
I
to
think
receive
it's just
information.
it's just to receive the information. And
We're
if
okay
there are any
with it.
changes you want me to make before,
In the budget.
yes,
That's when the vote would count. Yes, right?
sure. If you didn't approve the funding, then that creates a wrinkle in the implementation of the policy. But any feedback that you have before this rolls out to the organization, please let me know.
All right.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can
Yes,
I
sir.
back up a little bit? It's probably out of order, but for Mr. Jones, has any consideration ever been given to send out tax bills or statements twice a year rather than once? For cash flow purposes, maybe?
For clarification, when would you want to send tax bills?
At a 6-month interval rather than...
Okay, so if we can't send the first bill out until earliest July 1, based on the adoption of the budget. I don't think you'd want to split that bill into 2 pieces, because that would cause a tremendous confusion for mortgage companies about how much they need to pay and not pay.
That's good. It's all in here.
Some counties have done a reminder letter before it's delinquent around November 1 or December 1, but that still causes some confusion.
Only thing about cash flow.
North Carolina is a county, a state that has annual billing on an annual budget. I don't know any way we can make it a 50% bill. We do allow prepayments. So if someone, especially a senior citizen, on a fixed income who wants to make payments January, February, all year long, we do accept those payments.
Oh, yeah.
And we get well over $100,000 a year early because people are doing refinances, people selling properties, so that we do accept money early. I don't really have a great answer for that.
No, you're fine. No, that's great. Thank
Thank you.
Sorry. Good backtracking. I don't have anything as for the chairman's report. How do you got anything, man?
I don't think I do. Thank you.
All right, anybody else got anything you want to talk about?
Not in particular, but being on the Cardinal Innovations Board, I get to spend a weekend with Cardinal this weekend. And there are reductions that I've spoken of earlier as far as Cardinal is concerned with their 20 county catchment areas. So Person County does fall within that area. So if you've got any concerns about that in Medicaid, you can let me know. I don't know yet what those changes are, but they're coming, and again, I get to spend the weekend with those people.
That's wonderful.
Thank you so much for your appointment.
You're welcome.
I want to mention that I meant to bring a copy of it today, but Vance County last week or week before last had a big article in there that the county is having to pay fire department personnel for the fire departments. And we were discussing that. They went ahead and approved doing that. So it's not just a Person County problem. This thing's all over the place. I thought I'd mention that. I meant to bring the article today, and I forgot to bring it. And another thing I want to mention is that Pat Hill tried to get wireless service from Light Leap down at Mount Terza, and she applied to get that, and she's not far from that tower down there. You know, she lives the other side of the landfill. And here's a letter that she got back from Light Leap. It said, "Dear Ms. Hill, thank you for your recent inquiry regarding Light Leap Wireless Internet by North Carolina Wireless. At this time, I'm sorry to report that we will not be able to fulfill your request. The reason for this is due to the southwest trajectory of your home to our access point. That route leads straight across the rise into topography 1 mile away at the landfill, which would block our signal to you. As we move forward, we look forward to constructing many access points in various neighborhoods where there is demand. We hope to be able to provide the service to you in the future. The mountain of garbage they put up down there blocked the signal from our tower to her house. And I really think that the landfill crowd ought to put a pole or a mini tower up there to jump it to her. So I'm just pointing that out. I'm just making this statement. Because I recommended Light Leap to her. She called me and said she couldn't get CenturyLink. And she tried some other satellite outfit and she didn't like it. And I told her to try this. So I called Sybil and them and asked them what she needed to do. So she got in touch with them and did all of the legwork. But then she sent me a copy of this letter back. The garbage is high enough down there in that particular spot. It's blocking her signal. And I think they ought to help her out. But I just want to point that out. That's just my opinion. That's all I got to say about it.
I got it.
Okay. All right, nothing else. Have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in,
Recess.
excuse me, recess. Okay, thank
We're
you.
going to recess until 8:30 on March 18th
Okay.
to hold the interviews.
We are in recess.